You're listening to the Vox Media Podcast Network.
All right, get your MMA fan hats on, ladies and gentlemen. Grab some coffee at your local grocery store because there's a ton of action coming your way over the next 48 hours or so. We got LFA back tonight. For the bare knuckle enthusiasts, BKFC is back tonight. Bellator is back tonight as well at Bellator 245, headlined by the rematch between Phil Davis and Lyoto Machida. But we're going to be talking about tomorrow night's action because Bellator has another event, Bellator 246, and then the UFC is back with UFC Vegas 10. So you know what? Let's double dip and talk about both cards as we welcome you to a very special preview show here on MMAfighting.com. I am Mike Heck, being joined by my good friend, the Prince of Positivity, who is oh so positive today, Alex K. Lee. And AK, there's events every weekend, but 48-hour windows like this just make it clear that for those who enjoy the art of face punching, it's a good time to be a fan, is it not?
My goodness. So much MMA. More MMA than I thought was legal to be had in North America. But here we are. Like you said, bare knuckle, 2 Bellators, a UFC, LFA, and you know who knows what else is going outside of North America, around the world, which I'm sure Jed Mashui and I will end up covering. But it's a lot. Like you said, you said, like, you know, get your coffee or whatever, get whatever you need to stay awake. I think people should pick their spots, but I guess we'll get to that. We are here to help you guys. We're here to help you if you do not have time to watch all the fights, which I think is physically impossible. We're here to help you, guide you and help you make some smart decisions with your life.
There you go. Well, let's start kind of at that point. Before we get into some of these like big storylines from tomorrow night's slate, let's start with this question because we discussed this on Between the Links, which you can find in these here archives, wherever you find your MMA fighting content. Which card is better on paper, in your opinion? Bellator 246, headlined by the battle for the vacant Bantamweight title between Juan Archuleta and Patchy Mix, or UFC Vegas 10, headlined by Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill?
That's a good question. I thought you were going to kind of give Bellator a little bit of an advantage here and sort of like combine the best of both cards, like maybe take the top 3 fights. But I guess that wouldn't really be fair to UFC in that sense. This UFC card, I'm not going to lie, it kind of grew on me as I started to look it over. I think that's been the case with a lot of these recent UFC cards, that I think when we see them ahead of time, we're kind of like, not super enthused by them. And then as we do a little more digging, a little more research, I think all of us, most of us in the media anyway, I don't know, I can't speak for the fans, but most of the media were like, oh yeah, tons of sleepers, tons of good cards. So I do like the UFC card. I noticed you're not mentioning it. Why is 245 not an option? Bellator 245 not an option, Mike?
Because by the time this drops, the card's gonna be starting in like an hour, and I'm thinking about the people who are gonna wake up and watch it tomorrow morning. I'm trying to spread positivity. Bellator 245, watch it tonight, please watch it and enjoy it. But we're here to compare and contrast Saturday's card.
They have to cheer. You're right. That's right. I literally just said I'm trying to help them twice here as I waffled and said both cards are great. You know what? I will tell people if I would kind of lean towards 246. I think, like a lot of people in the media, I think we kind of love this 135 title match between Juan Archuleta and Patchy Mix. So if you're going just from the top, I think that has a better main event. But I also think there's a lot of other fights in the card intriguing. I think John Fitch, Neiman Gracie is actually going to be a really interesting fight. I know people, don't think John Fitch is the most exciting guy, but when he's in there with another grappler, in the past, it's usually when we've seen actually him have really exciting fights. So Neiman Gracie certainly fits that bill. Liz Carmouche debut, I think would be great. It's unfortunate her opponent, Deanna Bennett, missed weight by so much, but I always like Carmouche. Always think she's an exciting fighter. And then opening up the main card, Derek Campos and Keone Diggs, and Campos again, another guy rarely in a boring fight. So if we're just talking about like, there's only 7 fights in the Bellator card. If we're just talking about like kind of overall excitement, I think you have to go 246 tomorrow if you had to choose between watching one of the 2 cards.
I'm going to disagree with you. I mean, I think the Archuleta mixed bout is the best fight on paper this entire weekend. I will say that. But for me, it is the UFC in terms of exciting and competitive matchmaking. I mean, the Fitch Gracie fight is a good one. Carmouche's Bellator debut is a good story. Derek Campos, like you said, is always exciting. It's nice seeing a guy like Daniel Madrid, who should, in my opinion, already be in the UFC or at worst been on the Contender Series this year. He gets his first opportunity on a bigger stage. It's a fun card. But the UFC card, although the gap has lessened over the last few hours, while not like big name heavy, the fights and the matchups are really good. Like the main event's really solid between Waterson and Hill. Kama Worthy versus Ottman Azatar, that is arguably 1B in terms of competitive fights this weekend. That's a great one. Lee Modafferi is an important fight at 25. Love the Julia Avila-Sajara Eubanks fight. I also loved, notice the word loved, the Tyson Nam versus Matt Schnell fight. That is no longer happening. We also found out that Matt Frivola is out of his grudge match with Roosevelt Roberts. Kevin Krum is in. Brock Weaver now fights Jalen Turner after Frank Camacho was scratched, which I think arguably, and as exciting as Frank Camacho is, this is probably a more competitive fight on paper. So changes as to be expected in this day and age have happened. But right now, AK, let's start with the UFC, all right? We'll go Bellator and we'll dive into that as well. But Michelle Waterson versus Angela Hill is the main event. Karate Hottie, she's lost her last 2 fights. Overkill has been one of the more active fighters in women's MMA. She arguably should be on a 4-fight winning streak right now, but was on the wrong side of a pretty controversial decision against Claudia Gadelha. She will become the first Black American female fighter in UFC history to headline an event, which is an amazing story as well. While it's not as enticing of a headliner as the one that will take place on the other channel, this is still a pretty darn good fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think anytime you have 2 veterans like this, 2 people who know how to sell a fight, 2 stand-up fighters. I mean, I know they both kind of rounded out their game. Waterson certainly maybe more so than Angela Hill. She's always had kind of pretty good grappling skills, but I think this will primarily be a stand-up affair. Hill has good takedown defense as well. So even if Waterson wants to take the fight in that direction, I don't know if she'll be able to dominate in that way. So it's a good stand-up fight. It's a fight with 2 people who are motivated because, as you mentioned, Hill was coming off that controversial loss to Gadelha, which I did a robbery review for, and I think I agreed that Angela Hill should have won that fight, and that I think the judges were a little bit off. But Michelle Waterson is also coming off a close fight, not as controversial in my opinion. Her loss to Carla Esparza, also split decision. She was saying the same things during interviews this week, that she felt, yes, I won that fight. Again, I don't think that fight was as controversial as the Gadelha Hill fight, but it looks like they're both coming in with the same mindset where, people might scoff at the main event and say, oh, it's 2 fighters both coming off losses. But again, they were competitive losses at the very worst. And they're both fighters, again, who have had a name in their division for some time. So, yeah, I think it is a promising encounter. I don't quite have my pick for you yet. I'm sure you're going to ask, but I'm waffling. I'll have it by the end of this show, I guess, whenever you decide to ask.
All right. Well, I mean, Angela Hill obviously is one of those fighters because of her style, because of her activity. She could lose like 5 fights in a row and still be on the roster. Michelle Waterson, obviously, great story. The fight mom, hard worker. 115 is by far the deepest women's division in the UFC. It's not even close here. So I guess my question, and I don't think like either of these ladies are going to get cut or anything like that. That's way beyond the line here. But in terms of progression and where they stand in this division, who needs this one more tomorrow night, Waterson or Hill?
I mean, it has to be Waterson. I know she's arguably the more popular name. She's certainly a fan, like a friend of the company. She's a friend of Dana White's. So, like you said, if this is her third straight loss, I don't think she's anywhere close to being released. One of those losses was to Joanna. Again, Carla Esparza, former champion. So it really does not look that bad. Even if she loses 3 straight, there's ways for her to bounce back and get it. So I do think Waterson needs it a little more. Of course, I think she's also a little bit older. So there's all those kinds of markings of, someone who has been presented as a contender for so long. But then when you start to look at the reality of the situation, and again, like you said, we see, again, a losing streak, getting a little bit up there in age. I wouldn't say past her prime, but just, again, speaking the reality of the situation. So Waterson needs it more. Hill, if she loses, she'll be back in the cage in 2 weeks. So, I don't think it's as much of an issue for her.
All right. I know you're waffling right now, AK, but where's your mind and where's your brain taking you right now in terms of picking this fight? Now, tomorrow when you drop your predictions, it could change, but where are you at right now?
I'm going Hill. I'm actually feeling a little bit more confident about it than I was suggesting before. I think Hill has really developed a lot. I think she's got just a little bit more pop in her punches, not just than Waterson, but than she had in the past. I think she, we always know Hill had great volume, great pressure, but it's when you get that extra level of being able to do damage. And we definitely saw that in the Gadelha fight, which is why I think some people thought she won is, maybe the striking numbers weren't that far apart. But if you just the eye test of look who was landing harder, it really looked like it was Angela Hill, and I think that'll be the case against Waterson as well. Waterson has great defense, so I'm not saying she's going to like dominating like that, but I think it'll go to a decision, 5 rounds, which is nice for a fight that wasn't originally the main event. And I think Hill takes it. Possibly another split, unfortunately, for these 2 fighters, but that's where I'm leaning right now. Angela Hill by split decision.
I'm going to lean Waterson, and kind of looking up and down these cards, there's a theme that's going to go with some of my picks here. When it's a coin flip, I always kind of lean with the experience. And Michelle Waterson not only has the cage experience, but she has main event experience as well. She's been 5 rounds. She knows what it's like to get into rounds 4 and 5. Angela Hill has been there before in other promotions, but doing it in the UFC is a totally different ballgame. So she's going to get her opportunity to headline this card, which is good for her. 5 rounds. I just think Waterson's been there before. I think, coming into the second half of the fight, I think that's when Waterson really starts to show her veteran savvy, so to speak. So I think it's a really competitive fight. It's really close, but I think Waterson's gonna sneak in there, maybe steal it in the 5th round and get the victory. But tomorrow that could change, kind of like where you're at. But this co-main event, I am so fired up about. Kama Worthy versus Otman Azaitar. This is the best fight on the card, in my opinion. Both guys are finishers. Worthy wanted this fight. He's wanted it for almost a year now because that's the kind of guy that Kama Worthy is. He wants to fight the undefeated guy that nobody wants to fight. There's just so much to like here, AK. What are you looking for when these two gentlemen enjoy a fun game of fisticuffs for our enjoyment tomorrow night at the Apex?
Yeah, it is great that this got the co-main event slot. I almost wish they gave a little bit more of a spotlight on Worthy, because I think you've interviewed him, I've interviewed him. I think anyone who's interviewed him will tell you he's really got he's got that gift of gab. He's got a great personality. There's certainly a glow about him. He dropped a great line on your show talking about why he just planned. He loves to go in and do risk, like you said, face tough opponents and fight at risky styles. He said, I'm not a DJ. I don't care about records, which I thought was hilarious. You guys can check that out on What the Heck. Watch that show. And then you have Azaitar, who's on the other side, who has a super exciting style. Personality-wise, again, we don't really know him that well. There could be a language barrier there. Perhaps if he was doing interviews in German, who knows? Maybe he's the Conor McGregor of talking trash in German. We don't know. But his persona is a little bit in contrast to Kama, as in he came off very sort of humble, very modest during media day. So there's a contrast of styles there. But in the cage, there will not be a contrast of styles. In the cage, I do think we're going to see both guys go at each other. I'm expecting a 1st round finish. I think someone's getting knocked out. And I think that's exactly why they got the spot over, more well-known names like Roxanne Modaffar and Andrea Lee. Even an Ed Herman or like a Bobby Green are more well-known than them. And you could have seen them. I think you could have seen them get the co-main event spot just based on their tenure. But I think they made the right choice here and wanted to go with what looks like the most exciting fight on paper. So good stuff for Azaitar and Kama Worthy.
I know some people comment on Twitter and YouTube, and they're like, you guys talk storylines too much. Why don't you do like some technical breakdowns of these fights a little bit more? And with this fight specifically, I thought about it. It's so hard to break this thing down from a technical standpoint because this thing could end up anywhere, like absolutely anywhere. But like, I think I would give the ground advantage to Kama Worthy here. I have a hard time believing he's going to be shooting for takedowns, but I do give the advantage to him. Both guys have finishing power. Kama does an amazing job finding his range. Like he almost like sets up this invisible small circle in which he wants his opponents to step into, and he won't leave it. So he can trade or counter or do whatever. It's just a really fun style that he has. You saw it a lot in the Luis Pena fight, but it's just a really fun stylistic matchup that if it goes the full 15 minutes, this could get gnarly. And it's one of those fights where like neither guy may be the same afterwards if it gets that long, but I will be completely shocked if this goes to the judges' scorecard. Do you think it's going to end in a knockout? Who's going to get their hand raised, AK?
I'm going to lean towards Worthy. And I should add, I've probably seen more of Worthy than I have Otman Azaitar, so there's a bit of bias there. I'm just more familiar with his work. Azaitar, I did not see a lot of his stuff in Brave Championship Federation. I'll probably look over a little bit more before I do my predictions. But either way, even after I do that, I'm pretty sure I'm leaning with Worthy. I just think he, again, it's one of those fights where it's a stand-up. It's going to be a stand-up battle, so you can't exactly predict how it's going to go. It's really who gets there first. But just from what I've seen of Worthy, I do like his chances a little bit more of landing that first shot and landing that best shot.
The theme continues. Coin flip fights. I go with the experience. This is the definition of a coin flip fight. The odds makers agree. I think Worthy has the experience overall. He's got it slightly in the octagon, and Worthy can go into that 3rd round. He's been there many times before. Azaitar doesn't really get there that often. So I think Worthy actually submits him in the 3rd round, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be a great fight. Wouldn't be surprised with absolutely anything that happens between those two guys. But AK, I feel like this whole card is under the radar because people are looking ahead to September 19th with Covington and Woodley. They're looking ahead to UFC 253 with the 2 title fights there. But What's a fight or two that sticks out to you as a must-see banger that just isn't getting enough attention or love with everything else going on in the MMA world right now?
Well, I'll say one from the main card. I do like Bobby Green and Alan Patrick. I think it's a good matchup. Patrick's a bit of an odd case. He's fought so rarely over the last 2 years. I think this will be his third appearance since like early 2018, which is kind of crazy. But he's got a good style for Bobby Green. And Bobby Green really, I think, has shown a lot in his last 2 fights with Clay Guida and Lando Venata. He's a guy we've just said for so many years, like, you don't know which guy is going to show up. But man, when he's on, he's such an exciting and compelling lightweight to watch, and a guy that you feel like could honestly go in there and compete with like anyone in the top 10. It's the cliche. Anyone who's ever seen any preview show featuring Bobby Green, I'm sure you've heard some variation of this breakdown. But it's true. It's absolutely true. And I think a guy like Patrick's going to bring out the best of him. So I'm expecting a competitive but showcase performance for Green there. So I say keep an eye on that one on the main card. The prelims, there is a lot of good fights. The only thing, but I have to mention. Heavyweight Alexander Romanov is making his debut. This was kind of a weird fight. It was like added this week. It wasn't even on like UFC.com or like the ESPN schedule until I think today. I don't think there was any issues. I think there's just some sort of miscommunication there. He's a big heavyweight prospect. He's facing Rocky Martinez, who some people might know from Rizin. He's put on some fun fights over there. I do think he's being brought in kind of as a sacrificial lamb for Romanov. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying if you guys are looking for a big heavyweight KO on the preliminary card, I think Romanov is going to deliver. So that's another one I think people don't even know about because, again, it wasn't even on the schedule, and make sure to watch out for.
Yeah, like I said, I'm putting the whole card in that category, but you pick 2, I'll pick 2 as well. One from the main card, one from the prelims. I feel like I do this every week, but I'm going with the quote-unquote curtain jerker. Literally nobody is talking about this fight. Sabina Mazo and Justine Kitch. Like, Mazo is always exciting, and Kitch just wants to get in there and kick you right in the face. Like, those two are going to stand and trade and beat the hell out of each other until one falls down. And both are very durable fighters. So that always has fireworks written all over it. So that's going to be good. The other, New England bias alert, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Rodriguez versus Ed Herman. First off, as you can attest to, AK, Ed Herman's virtual media day scrum yesterday was outstanding. I mean, this guy's been around for so long. He's still doing it. He's still winning, and he's taking on Mike Rodriguez, coming off a quick finish win that he needed very badly. Why does this one stand out to me, AK? Because of Ed Herman's durability. All right. We've seen Mike go in there and finish guys in the first round. This is what he does. Very rarely does it go to the second round, but if Mike Rodriguez wins a fight, it's because he finished a guy in the first round. But what happens in this fight if he hits Herman with those massive shots early, gets him in the clinch, starts beating him up, and he can't get him out of there? And the knock on Rodriguez over the years is that if it gets to the second or third rounds, he starts to slow down, the confidence starts to waver a little bit, the cardio isn't always there. But from what I've been told, that's something that he's kind of sought out himself, something he's been working on diligently. So I'm very interested to see how that fight plays out between Rodriguez and the most veteran fighter he's ever fought in, a guy like Ed Herman.
Yeah, he referred to Herman as being tanky, which I think was unclear for us, but he apparently was a video game reference for anyone, of course, for many of our viewers out there who also play MMOs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, which I know this is a big crossover audience with that in MMA. The tank is the character that goes forth and absorbs the damage. So that's a little explanation there for people who were wondering what Mike Rodriguez meant by calling Ed Herman tanky. He's very durable and very strong. But I like that matchup as well. New England bias aside, and I actually think Rodriguez is going to be able to finish him.
Across the country in New England, in Connecticut, Bellator has the second half of their doubleheader at Mohegan Sun. Juan Archuleta versus Patchy mixed for the vacant Bantamweight title. I mean, this is just such a great fight to cap off this card and these slate of 2 events this weekend, AK. What makes this fight so intriguing in your mind outside of just having a title on the line?
I mean, for me, I thought Archuleta, I was very wrong. I thought Archuleta was good enough to win the featherweight title. I really did. Maybe my pick was way off, and maybe I'm overestimating what I've seen from Archuleta. I actually thought he had what it took to beat Patricio Pitbull. So for him to go back to 135 and get another shot at title, very well deserved. And I know you didn't ask for my pick, but I just want to say I am leaning towards him. But with the caveat that I have underestimated Patchy Mix many, many, many times in the past. I don't know if it's his relative youth. I don't know if it's he's not a big trash talker. You know, maybe I'm underestimating him that way. I mean, he's 13-0. He's had some incredible submissions. Like, his skills are so legit. And for some reason, I just keep picking against him, which I'm doing again now. You mentioned experience. I cannot ignore the amount of high level experience that Juan Archuleta has. He's really been in there with some of the top guys, and I don't think Patchy can match that just yet. So that's, you ask why it's so intriguing. I mean, look, I know Kyoji Horiguchi had to vacate the title, but I would have I don't think there needs to be any asterisk next to whoever wins this belt. I think whoever wins this belt is the best bantamweight in Bellator, and I think easily one of the top 10 bantamweights in the world. If Archuleta wins, again, based on his record, I would maybe even make an argument top 5, but it's a very, very deep division. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but that is certainly where the intrigue lies.
Yeah, Archuleta is just so seasoned. Like, he could fight at so many different weight classes. The guy had an 18-fight winning streak before the Patricio Pitbull fight. And, there's no shame in losing to Patricio Pitbull, but not a lot of guys make it all that time with Patricio Pitbull. They don't go the full distance. He did. Archuleta, his style is just so fun. He just gets in your face, and he's got no fear at all. I love his style. It's fan-friendly, excellent on the feet, just grinds you down with his stand-up. But Patchy Mix, man, while having less than half the experience Archuleta does, his resume is just super good. Like, 12-0, he's got submission wins over guys in the UFC, like Andre Ewell, guys like Tony Gravely. He's got a submission win over Ricky Bandejas. I mean, this guy is a legit prospect at 35. On the feet, give the advantage to Archuleta. I don't think there's much argument there. On the ground, the wrestling, massive advantage for Patchy Mix. I think Archuleta's, like you sort of alluded to, his weight class, the sweet spot is at 45. I love how he's willing to bounce around, but I'd be lying if I wasn't thinking about that when it comes to this fight as maybe a slight hindrance, especially against a guy with the motor that Patchy Mix has. I think this fight is very competitive. I think it's lined right with Mix as the favorite here. Not a massive favorite, but he is the favorite. In the end, I think Mix will have enough left in the gas tank to earn a decision win, maybe a late finish, but it's that damn good of a fight where I'm just not all that confident about this pick at all, EK. Not at all.
And that's good. That's what we want. That's what you want in a competitive main event. I mean, it's great to have main events where you have a star who's like a heavy favorite as well. But again, in this case, I think when you're fighting for a vacant title, you really want to have that. Bellator really wants to have the option to say either one of these guys could be the best. So this will decide it. There's no downside to either guy losing. It's not like, oh, if one of these guys loses, they were exposed. Certainly not. Again, Archuleta, like I said, been around for a while. And Mix, yes, undefeated, but a loss is not. Just is not going to send him back that far. His skills are so legit. He's had just some of the most exciting submissions in Bellator history already in his short time with the company. So yeah, it's exactly what you want. You don't need to be able to say either guy's an A side, either guy's a B side. I think it's two A sides colliding, and that's Bellator, nothing more than Bellator could ask for in a bantamweight title fight right now.
John Fitch versus Neiman Gracie in the co-main event. Over 30 fights is the experience advantage for Mr. Fitch. The guy has been in there with everybody over the last 18 years. I mean, he's unbeaten in his last 6 after all of that. He's coming off the draw to Rory McDonald. He's taking on Neiman Gracie, who's going to look to bounce back from a loss for the first time in his career, which was also to Rory McDonald. Very interesting matchup here, AK. What's on your mind when you think about this one?
Neiman Gracie was humbled, I think, in his last fight. There's another fight I picked wrong, by the way. I was very high on the Gracie train, and I still obviously I think he's a great fighter, but I definitely counted out Rory McDonald too much. And Rory put on just a great, I was going to say a vintage Rory McDonald performance. Just controlled the action, was rarely in danger, and he kind of showed. Again, we talk about the experience thing. He really showed Neiman Gracie that there's another level to this stuff, right? Where does John Fitch sit in that hierarchy? I'm not sure. I mean, again, he fought Rory McDonald to a draw, which some people thought he may have won. It was a very, very good competitive fight. And like I said, he hasn't lost in years now. I think 6 years, something like that. So, he hasn't fought that frequently, but he hasn't lost 6 years. It stands. So I need to see how – I'm really focusing on how Gracie bounces back from this. Gracie's in MMA have a tendency of burning out a little bit. I hate to say it, but they're not known for their longevity. They're known for burning very brightly and then fading away. So I hope that's not the case with Neiman Gracie. I hope he's legit and that he uses this this bounce back opportunity. But a guy like Fitch is exactly the kind of person who he's not a rebound fight. he's the kind of guy who takes you into deep waters and possibly sends you further into a slump. So fingers crossed for Neiman here, but I'm definitely looking at how he reacts to that first loss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with Fitch here for my pick. Like, I know he's been submitted in his career a few times, but he went the distance with Damian Maia a few years back while Damian Maia was submitting everybody. I mean, he's gone 5 rounds with GSP and didn't get finished. Like, I know that was a long time ago for both of those examples, but he just knows what it takes to win in these type of situations. Will it be the most fan-friendly and exciting performance we've ever seen? Probably not, but, you know, like I've stated many times throughout this preview show, in these coin flip, even line type fights, I'll go with experience in these scenarios. I think Fitch wins a decision here at a fight that fans will likely be complaining about on Twitter. AK, what say you?
Oh, forget it, Mike. I'm going Gracie by submission. Why not? You know, it's a fun way to pick. I agree on paper. Like I said, I think my head is telling me Fitch by decision. I'm sure a lot of people, that's the way they'll be leaning. But I'm gonna take a risk here. I'm gonna say that Gracie really learns a lot, learns positive things from that Rory McDonald loss, as opposed to being demoralized, and comes back from that sort of thing stronger. All bets are off again. Also, of course, we're talking about fighting in the pandemic era here. We don't know how these guys have been able to train, how they've been able to prepare, which is key normally when recovering from a loss. But I'll go with sort of a wild card thing here, and I'm gonna say Gracie by submission.
This will be the last fight card of the Bellator Paramount era tomorrow night.
Oh, Bar Rescue.
To CBS Sports on October 1st.
Master.
Yes. All of those great. No more cops anyway, so no more promos for that. But do you have an under the radar fight pick for this card, AK?
I don't know if it's under the radar. There's only 7 fights. But again, if we're just going outside the top 2, I'm not going very far. I like the Liz Carmouche, Deanna Bennett fight, as I mentioned before. Very unfortunate. Deanna Bennett, I think, missed weight by almost 6 pounds, but she is a veteran of the game. I'm not sure what went wrong there. I'm sure we'll get the story on that at some point, but she's an exciting fighter. If anyone saw her on The Ultimate Fighter, she's one of the probably most compelling personalities, and her fights on the show were really good. And she's also done great work in Invicta and has legitimate wins prior to her appearance on The Ultimate Fighter. She had some huge wins over some big names. I'm just trying to recall, look at who she beat here. Oh, well, she beat Katja Kankanpa, who people might not remember anymore, but that she was a big deal back in about 5 years ago. She also has a win over Jennifer Maia. So Bennett is one of those fighters. She has all the talent in the world, almost like a female Bobby Green, you might say, someone who's been around for a while. And when you see her fight and she's at her best, you're like, oh, this is someone who I understand why they could compete for an Invicta title. And then there's other days where you're like, oh, person's just completely out of it. And I don't know how they made it this far in the first place. But I don't know which Bennett's going to show up on Saturday, but I know which Carmouche is going to show up because she always shows up. I know her her fight with Shevchenko, is the less said, the better. But outside of that, I've always thought of Carmouche as a fairly exciting fighter. So this is her chance to wash the taste of that regrettable title fight out of everyone's minds and move on to this new stage of her career.
I like Daniel Madrid versus Pat Casey. That's a lot of fun. Fun fact for those watching right now, I was actually the ring announcer for one of Pat's recent fights for Ammo Fight League last summer, and he won quickly. But Madrid's one of the best 85ers in the country, not signed to a major promotion. But Pat is the kind of guy that's going to go in and try to take his head off. I think it's a mismatch on paper, but Pat is an interesting cat because he doesn't care. He just wants to go in there and brawl. I'm also excited to see the return of Davion Franklin. He gets back in there. He's only 1-0, but just a massive, powerful heavyweight. WWE had their eye on this guy for a little while. He's taking on Ross Hilton, who he's got a little bit of momentum right now after the Rudy Shafroth fight. I think it's a good test for Davion against a gritty, confident veteran who's been in there with some powerful guys. He's recently fought Jorgen De Castro. He's fought Chris Sarro, who BKFC fans will know. This is a guy that's been lighting the bare knuckle world on fire over the last year or so, but that should be a fun one. And it should be an overall fun weekend of action here in the mixed martial arts world. AK, any final thoughts on any of these cards or any of these fights or any of these stories?
I know we're talking primarily about Saturday, but again, we do want to remind people, like I said, the show will go out probably a little bit before, maybe an hour, a couple hours before tonight's Bellator card, Bellator 245. I am unquestionably intrigued by the rematch between Phil Davis and Lyoto Machida. For anyone who didn't see, I wrote a robbery review about their first fight. Spoiler, I do think that Machida was robbed. So we'll see. We'll see if an injustice gets corrected tonight. But otherwise, like we said, people, we've given you all the information we can. Hopefully we've helped you a little bit in deciding how to spend your Saturday night. But otherwise, whatever you end up, I would say, I don't think you can lose. I think whichever show you tune into, and if you're smart, you're kind of strategically flipping between the shows. But whichever one you tune into, I'm sure you'll have a good time. This is high level MMA is happening this weekend.
And regardless of what you choose and how you choose it, we will have you covered throughout all the festivities on MMAfighting.com tonight and tomorrow night. So keep it locked in with us for results, for scrums, analysis, and more as we put a bow on this unique dual preview show here for MMAfighting.com. For Alex K. Lee, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the face punching, my friends.
You're listening to the Vox Media Podcast Network.